Excellent, excellent, excellent. It looks like I am going live on Facebook. Here we go. Awesome. It looks like I'm live, and today I'm going to be talking about S&M. Uh, S&M is one of those things that it's actually two words, the sadism and masochism, kind of put together. It's something that Facebook community standards don't like you to write sadism or masochism or sadomasochism uh, in the descriptions and things because it kind of triggers them. But I like to do these videos here, and as you can see from the bottom of the screen, there is a parental advisory. This is mature content, but it is mature, but it's never graphic. And today I'm trying to also cross-post this video, also going live in whips, chains, and duct tape. You can find that on Facebook with the @ WCDT BDSM. And you can also find me at the PrimalPiggy, all one word, at the PrimalPiggy on Facebook. And so I'm PrimalPiggy. That's the name that I like to go by on the internet. And I stream some gaming, I pull tarot cards, and I do BDSM education. And I've been going through like a foundational series, and we went through like the character traits of DOMs and of submissives. And then we talked also a little bit about polyamory in the beginning. And then we talked about different power exchange relationships and authority exchange relationships, and then power neutral relationships where there was no exchange. And so that was a really great video. And then I wanted to talk a little bit today about the SM in BDSM. It stands for sadism and masochism. I'm going to pull up my notes. You may see my skin turn a little bit different color with my notes kind of light me up here. And so sadomasochism is a word from psychology used to describe sexual practices that are characterized by both sadism, that's with a D, sadism, and masochism. They're, they're kind of some emotionally loaded terms because they, outside of BDSM, people generally think of a sadist or a masochist in negative terminology, but they within BDSM they are extremely positive. They are great outlets. They are great roles. In my relationship, I'm a sadist, and my sub is a masochist, and she's also somewhat of a sadist as well. And then I kind of like to receive a little bit, kind of back. It's kind of a give and take. So I guess there could be somewhat of a spectrum. Even though I really am more of a sadist, I get off by giving pleasurable pain. I'll get into that in just a second. So actually, that's a good time to get into that. So a sadist within the context of BDSM, like I said, is a very positive thing. It's a person who receives pleasure by giving others pleasurable pain or suffering. And so you'll hear that word a lot today in this video today, pleasure, because it's all about pleasure. A sadist receives pleasure by giving pleasurable pain, not by giving pain that's not found pleasurable. And so, it may push the limit sometimes of your submissive, and in that very moment, it may be a little bit of a gray area about how pleasurable it is for the masochist, but ultimately they are submitting to the scene because they're also receiving pleasurable pain. And so that transition to that. A masochist is a person who feels or receives pleasure from receiving pleasurable pain. It can include moderate to severe pain or suffering, and it's said that masochists, they enter into BDSM saying ouch, but then when they leave a scene, they're going ah. So, there's a certain translation in their body where they receive the pain and translate it into pleasure. And so it takes somewhat of a special person to do that, because everyone doesn't like pain. And now there's different types of pain as well. I think I can mention that right now. So there are good pains and bad pains. Like a paper cut uh, would be considered by most people a bad kind of pain. But knife play, if you cut with a knife, it may be within a scene, may be good pain, given the erotic nature of it, and so, or the sexual slash erotic nature, or the nature of the DS or MS relationship. It may be something that that may be pleasurable in that context. And so, a broken bone is a bad kind of pain. A headache is like a migraine headache is a bad kind of pain, but a spanking or paddling or some type of impact, or some type of like situational bondage, those types of things. So it's not always impact play. There are some types of pain that are outside of impact play, even though we often think about like spanking or paddling or caning or flogging. We think of those types of sensations, those types of scenes as the kind of the outlet of sadomasochism. But if you are not, you may not be into impact play, and you can still participate in sadism and masochism without the impact. There's, obviously there's scratching and biting and needles and knives and all different things. Oh my! But there are aspects of bondage where you're tying up that can be different types of suspensions and those types of things. And then there's also situational bondage, where you would, attach something to a part of the body where, like you're having to stay up on your tippy toes, because if you drop down onto your heels, then it may pull a rope and pull a different part of your body, causing some type of pleasurable pain. And so somebody who would rig that up, or tie up the person, may be a sadist, and the person that would be receiving that situational bondage would be a masochist. And so not always about impact play. There are other different kinds of, obviously the sky's the limit, really. Anything that you are into or think you may be into, I actually, suggest that you get creative, because it's, like I said, it's not all about impact. There's, of course, scratching and biting and different types of those things. But then there's also clamps, like something like nipple clamps can be a type of sadomasochism that is not related to impact. It's related to a clamp. So a clamp, of course, needles and knives and just all kinds of things. And so, giving and receiving sensations is really a sliding scale. There's certain, people sometimes are, there's a sliding scale of interest. So you may be into some types of pain, but not into other types of pain. And so you may be into certain types of paddles and not into others. So like my submissive will will safe word on a wooden spoon. There's something about a wooden spoon that she is not into. And so, but, a wooden paddle, a big paddle, she may really enjoy something like that. And so there's definitely a sliding scale. We're not a cookie cutter kind of people. We don't come out of a cookie cutter mold. And so there's different types of sadists. And let me talk about a couple of them. There are sensory sadists. They derive pleasure from giving sensations that are other than pain, like tickle torture. This one says like ice in certain parts of the body, or figging. That would be like putting a piece of ginger in inserting it into a part of the body, or like forced orgasms or denial of orgasms, like edging, could be a sensory sadist. So it's not always about not always about the type of typical pain that you think about. Sometimes it's about giving us like discomfort. And then a sensual, that was a sensory sadist. A sensual sadist enjoys giving sensations that are can be sexual or erotic. They can include pain, but they are also really considering the bottom or the submissive's pleasure. And there's a certain type of sometimes it's not really a dom or a sub. Sometimes it's a top bottom situation. And there are service tops whose pleasure comes from service tops, sorry, that they're using S&M skills to please the other person while also engaging in activity that they enjoy. And then sometimes sometimes a top will just help a friend or a new person to explore a new activity. So sometimes topping is just giving somebody, allowing them to kind of dip their toes into maybe some impact play, or some type of sadomasochism that just kind of opens the door for them. So, like I said, this is a very a foundational look at the S&M role. So I don't want to get too heavy into the psychology and all of that, but we do want people to be safe, sane, and consensual. And let's look. There are psychologists have 4 general classifications for sadists, sexual sadists, that is. There's class 1, 2, 3, and 4. We only are concerned with the 1s and the 2s, and we're not really concerned with the 3s or the 4s, because we only talk about and describe non-violent consensual BDSM. But like a 3 and a 4, a class 3 and a 4 is a sadist who does not get consent and either is involved with an injury that is not serious, and that would be a class 3. So that would be like an assault or a battery, maybe a rape or something like that. And a class 4, those are the types of people that cause serious injury or death. And those are sadists that, of course, non-consensual, because you can't consent to death. You shouldn't consent to death. And so we, like I said, we're not thinking about 3s and 4s, but class 1s, we'll talk about those. Those are people that are bothered by their sadistic fantasies and they don't act on them. And so we think that, ultimately, it would be a good idea to talk with a therapist or whatnot. If that is you, talk with a kink-related therapist. See why you're bothered by these things that are your fantasies for you, and that you don't act on them. At least come to a place where you're not shameful of yourself. Because we want you to be body positive and sex positive. We want you to be positive about your fantasies and things like that. And so, you don't ever have to act on them, but, really ultimately, you should probably look at a kink-related therapist if you are bothered by your fantasies, your sadistic or your masochistic fantasies, and you are bothered by them, and come to a place where you can have some self-love, some self-acceptance. Come to a place where you're not feeling shame. And then there's those class 2, and those are us. Those who act on their sadistic sexual urges with consenting partners. That's the big thing. Who are willing to willingly suffer pain or humiliation or discomfort, those types of things. And so So anyways, that's thing. So that was talking about sadists mainly. Does apply to masochists as well. And so at least in the realm of ones and twos with consent. And so for masochists are people, like I said, that are entering into BDSM with able to translate the receiving of pain into pleasure. And so they find pleasure in somebody giving them pain or suffering, and then they translate that into their own pleasure as well. And so within the context of BDSM, with a BDSM masochist, ultimately pain is not important. Actually, many of them may have no pain tolerance whatsoever. For them, the excitement comes from possibly the context of the scene. This is a context masochist. There's 4 different types of masochists. Sorry. Well, I kind of butchered that one. There's 4 different kinds. There's a context masochist, an endorphin masochist, an exhibition masochist, and then a sexual masochist. So let's look at these 4 types. I apologize for that. For a context masochist, pain is not important. Many of them may not have a tolerance for pain, or very much so. But then the excitement comes from the surrounding, the context of the scene, the S&M toys, or the leather or the latex or whatever we're wearing, and possibly even the atmosphere, the dungeon. A well-equipped dungeon is really pleasure for them. And so they may get tired of the same thing, and they want to use a lot of different kinds of toys, a lot of different kinds of sensations, and they are really just interested in the context, in the scene. They are, receiving most of their pleasure, even though they're receiving painful pleasure, they're receiving most of their pleasure from the scene itself, and maybe could focus a lot on the build-up to that scene, and then also they all need lots of aftercare as well. And so then there's an endorphin masochist, and this type of masochist is into pain in order to get the subspace. They want to get into that subspace. And so you can be in subspace even if you're just bottoming as well. We just call it subspace because it's like that la-la feeling of when you kind of slip maybe in and out of reality or in and out of awareness. It's almost like it's that endorphin, that type of drug that our body gives us. And so they'll often accept a substantial amount of pain in that kind of play because they want it to drive them over the edge into subspace. And so they definitely they may be a heavy bottom, what they call it, a heavy bottom, where they can take a lot, but make sure that you're using somewhat of a diversity as well, that you're not hitting the same area over and over and over again. You may want to use different types of impact in different areas. You may want to use things that are that will drive them into subspace that are not just impact related. You may want to use some bondage and some clamps or something else like that. And then they will, because of the heavy nature, they'll need a lot of aftercare, and they may need they may need a little bit of first aid type of care. So you want to definitely, if there's any open wounds or anything, you want to clean those up. And they may, like I said, the aftercare may be more involved. And so definitely, look at that. And then there's an exhibitionist masochist. And to them, to be seen as the most, like having the most beautiful equipment and the one that takes the most pain with the most beautiful clothing, being the center of attention. This may also be somewhat of a SAM, a smartass masochist. And so somebody who's, in the scene to make a scene, they may the pain may drive them to be very vocal or very expressive. And to them, they receive a lot of pleasure from that attention. And so you definitely want to maybe use some different sensations. Maybe use a slapper, something that's really loud, something that makes a big crack, maybe a whip makes a big crack or a pop. You don't even have to really touch their skin a lot with a whip. You just give it that loud crack. And it may be, you may want to wear things that are more flashy, masks and gloves and different types of things like that with an exhibitionist masochist. And so you'll want to definitely give them, attention in the scene, but you also want to give them a good amount of attention and positive affirmation and things in your aftercare, and tell them, wow, everyone was really noticing you, they were really seeing you, and really kind of, give them that attention that they're craving. And so then there is a sexual masochist. And these are the people that are good at receiving pain, somewhat sexual pain, but they receive pain and they translate it into like a sexual pleasure as well. And so let's see, they this can include things like fisting and insertions or consensual non-consent. For men, it can mean also like fisting or big plugs and different kinds of things like that. Sometimes it can be like orgasm control could be there, or like a forced orgasm thing could be in with that as well. And so definitely use different types of sensations. If you're doing big insertions and things, you definitely want to have some prep with that. Definitely want to have like towels and things handy so that you can keep everything clean, and that you can just have a really good, comfortable scene. Definitely want to keep an eye or an ear out for safe words with sexual masochists. And also you always want to make sure that because you want to make sure that consent is continuous. And so they may consent to something initially, but you want to always also check in and make sure that you still have consent throughout entire scenes. And so really for everybody that's a thing, but especially with sexual masochists. And so we looked at briefly four different kinds of sadists. Well, we looked at like sensory and sensual, and then we looked at tops, but then we also looked at a couple different kinds of the four classifications. And remember that we're only concerned with the nonviolent and the consensual ones. We really want you to be body positive and sex positive. And so we're really interested in you receiving and giving pleasurable pain. That's really, pleasure is really what it's all about. And so the SM, what I like to say, the SM and BDSM, it's all about pleasure. And so it's about both giving, it's about having the pleasure in giving, having the pleasure in someone giving, having the pleasure in receiving, and having the pleasure in someone receiving. And so really the pleasure is in both, is really both, in the giving and in seeing the person receive. And also it's in seeing the person give and then receiving and having the pleasure too. And so that's really important. That's what makes the S&M in BDSM really, like I said, magical. It really makes it a very positive thing, because it's really about giving somebody pleasure. And so it's really somewhat can add a lot of spice to a relationship. Even just really mild sensory discomforts and pains and things can just really add a lot of spice. And so don't totally discount if you have a low pain threshold or you are not really into giving very intense pain. Don't totally discount the S&M part of BDSM, because there's very mild things that you can participate in, mild discomforts and things that can be, kind of pleasurable. Even in like the vanilla context, there is a certain amount of like a rough sex or something like that, like a mild choke, or mild just pulling of the hair or something like that. There's, in the more vanilla context, there's even aspects of S&M, and so it's not just within BDSM. But so don't totally discount it, is what I'm saying. Be at least mildly open to it, but definitely allow your partners or potential partners to know what you think your tolerance of pain is, and what your limits are, and what your comfortability is with the S&M in BDSM. So that was a really good video. Like I said, you can find me. I help admin at Whips, Chains, and Duct Tape. That's WCDT BDSM on Facebook. And then I am the Primal Piggy at the Primal Piggy on Facebook as well. This has been a really great one. Just look forward to doing more foundational BDSM videos. They're always mature, but they're, like I said, never graphic. And so this has been a good one. Thank you for participating with me today.